Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Understanding Human Design podcast. I'm Karen Curry Parker, and I'm so excited to be here today with someone who I have a deep honor of calling friend, in addition to being privileged, I will say, to be able to bear witness to this woman's work in her professional arena. Asha Ramakrishna is joining us today. She's the #1 best-selling author of the book, The Priestess Code, which, if you haven't had a chance to read that book, is a phenomenal, I don't know what to call it, more like a practical guide to help women or help humans, if you will, unlock the essential nature of what it means to, in a ritual-based way, really express the truth of who you are and the journey, the arc, that beautiful feminine arc that we go through when we go through a process of awakening and opening up to the full expression of the power of who we are as women. She teaches feminine principles and does amazing workshops, has been doing all this brand new powerful work around the importance of ritual as serving as a representative threshold that defines for us the past and the potential that we're moving into fulfilling, and anchors us into a deeper place of alignment with not only who we are, but who we are historically as people on the planet, who we are in accordance to the individual expression of our unique heritage. And that's just like a small smidgen of the amazing stuff that she does. She's also an amazing mom. She's been studying human design as long as I have, almost. She's giving me numbers, and just has a beautiful powerhouse of source of knowledge to share with you guys, and is going to be speaking at our very first International Human Design Conference, and is going to be leading a session in Spanish, in addition to teaching a post-conference session on sacred commerce, which is one of the many other juicy, powerful things that she activates in people. So Asha, thank you and welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. I get to be on your podcast.
It's always fun when we get to hang out together. So I want to talk to you for just a minute about, I actually want to start talking about sacred commerce, because you and I have been involved in various different ways over the last 20 years in evolving people's understanding of business, in activating the power of women in business, in connecting people to their soul purpose in business. And in some ways, this is a conversation that people have had a lot about conscious commerce, but you're really bringing in a very different take on this now. Talk to me about how the idea of conscious commerce, if you will, has evolved in the last few years.
I mean, I think that we're still evolving, right? And I think that based on how we're seeing that the system doesn't work for everybody, we're beginning to question it in a bigger way. Mm-hmm. So I think the questioning has always been there, and it's now that we're saying, okay, wait a second. Now that we've had this pause in 2020, right? I mean, now that we've had this pause, we have been able to reassess what it means for us to really take care of ourselves, what it means for us to really be present with our kids, what it means for us to be conscious of what we purchase, who we purchase from, and even taking a look at, well, who's the system working for? Mm-hmm. And based on the levels of privilege that we have, what's our role in all of that? So I think that's that the deeper rootedness of the conversation is just getting grittier rather than like lofty and philosophical. Now we're like, okay, no, really, for real. How do we really do this differently? And I do think that, I mean, some people have the ability to turn things upside down and change the entire structure of their business, like bless them. And then some of us have to do this in steps and have to do this compassionately and in a process where we allow for progress, but also like that the foundation, especially like the financial foundation, is not rocked.
I think that's a really valid point. And I think, I think that that addresses what I see sometimes really stops people short from making those changes. There's this sort of like, oh my gosh, I have to like start from the foundation and redo everything that I'm doing in the way that I'm doing it. And being able to connect to that incrementally in a way that doesn't feel threatening or scary or causes, as you just said, to rock the foundation is huge. When we look at human design and we look at human design in the context of the fact that the chart itself is under a lot of evolutionary pressure and it's really in the process of evolving. And we see that one of the things that's really evolving is the energy for business. That the channel 5027, which is what I like to call the mama energy in the chart, right? It's the energy that's all about, are the people who come into contact with my business being cared for, well fed? Is the business itself creating more well-being, enhancing the well-being of the world? Talk to me a little bit about how you see the future of a compassionate, sacred commerce evolving in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that human design is one of those mythologies or markers that ping us for there's a change.
Hmm.
And it's not the only one.
Right.
Right, we can look at the Vedic yugas and know that okay, there's a change coming. Like
Hmm.
we're in a Kali Yuga, deconstruct. Then we go into like a 10-year rebuild, and then we look at even integral theory or spiral dynamics, and we see where we are, like where the percentages of people are. Some, where the majority is really thinking about their own well-being, and then some of us are thinking about, well, we're all one, so how do we compensate for that? And then others are thinking, well, how about, what would happen if everybody actually had a seat at the table and it wasn't just about like one ideology? And so the three ethos that I've been working with for since 2015, and now it's really landed in sacred commerce is, and it's in everything I do, but I can see it so vividly in this framework, is the feel good, be wealthy, and give back.
Hmm.
And the feel good is really about incorporating the great mother essence. It's about having that elder wise counsel, female wise counsel, who's in your board of directors, or who you're, it's that kind of energy, not the cranky grandmother, by the way, but the really like embodied, fun, creative, give, who doesn't give what, or rat's ass what anybody thinks, and just say what they say, but it's with truth,
Hmm.
and it's with truth and love and nurturing for kind of the highest good of all.
Hmm.
And so that feel good, great mother essence is what I think we all know this. It's not new. We see business today. We understand that the patriarch is at work. We understand that a colonized system is at work. And we understand that the feminine is truly missing and not accounted for and not honored. From the employee to how many females are CEOs of companies, to the practices, right? The practices are not necessarily about holding the earth. The practices are not necessarily about how do we honor someone who, I know this sounds like so minute, but like how do we honor women who have menstrual cycles?
Hmm.
We don't.
Right.
So to me, it's like, yeah, that 5027 is very much a part of this new way of being. And it's also something that it's not just outside of us. It's how do we incorporate that kind of philosophy, that kind of way of being for our own selves.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. So as I'm preparing for the talk, for the conference, one of the talks, I asked people, what do you think holds us back from fully expressing who we are? And mostly what I heard was fear, or afraid of being judged. And some people said a system of oppression, and family dynamics, trauma, all these things, which are all valid. And I started looking at that, and especially because so much of it was fear and caring what other people think, I started looking at that and thought, wow, we've internalized so much of the responsibility to a place where we're kind of beating up on ourselves. I mean, the fact that we're saying that the reason we can't fully express is because we feel fear, or we have we care about other people think. And I look at the archetype of the gate 10 as like kind of like a marker, like a way to look at this, right? So I mean, you taught me all this, but if we look but the way that I see the gate 10, you know, self-love, what's your, do you have a new name for the gate 10?
I kept it self-love because
Oh, okay.
there's no variation on that. It just
Okay, cool. And so these levels of self-love, how we get there, right? It's like, okay, first level is like we think we're victims, right? And we think like we think we're victims, we're the reason, and obviously no one likes that place, no matter what, no matter if the system doesn't work for you, it's still not, it's not an empowering place. And then that next level of empowerment, of taking 100% responsibility for everything that happens in your life, is such a powerful, amazing place. And it's a little heavy.
oh, and it's like guilt riddled.
Right. Right. It's like, oh, it's, I mean, I'm telling you, through when I first started being in the personal growth vortex, I was like, everything is my fault. Right. And so as much as there can be empowerment in that, to take 100% responsibility, it was also that it can have a shadow aspect to it when we go off balance. And then when we move to this place of self-love, it's not self-love like, well, okay, I'm going to love on myself. And if it's not my responsibility, then, you know, like, what do we do with that? What do we do with that? Do we still have sovereignty? And the way that I see it is like, look, we love ourselves enough to know when it's our responsibility, when it's someone else's responsibility. And we really hold this sense of the beloved, right? It's not about excusing, not about excusing anyone's naughty behavior or problematic behavior, but understanding that we have a responsibility to love ourselves enough, sometimes to even create boundaries, not walls, but boundaries that allow us to really experience love for ourselves and compassion for the other.
Well, and I think not only is that obviously self-loving, it's actually loving in general, because when you say to someone, look, this is not my problem, it's yours, you're holding them in a space where you see them as capable of figuring it out, instead of disempowering them by being responsible or codependent with the relationship. And that, I see that happening a lot in the healing arts, and and I think it's a huge source of burnout when you can't set those boundaries and release a client, or release, you know, release people to being responsible for their own stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's okay for us to also consider that we have a hook. We have a hook with our thing, right? Like, it doesn't, like, our relationships don't happen in void. We have hooks, and that's the responsibility we take. It's like, okay, what's my hook here? Because I also see in our spiritual communities where it's the mirror paradigm, right? The mirror and projecting paradigm, whereas, well, this is about you, it's not me. And then we forget to say, well, okay, come on, like, it takes two to tango. Like, let's be honest here, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. So I want to shift gears just a little bit, because one of our core intentions around creating this conference was to begin, and I say begin because, as you just said, there's an incremental process of bringing things back into balance when we start to explore concepts like inclusiveness. And one of our intentions this year was to make sure that we construct this event in a way that is inclusive. And you have been bringing to the forefront a lot of information and doing a lot of work in continuing to point people to those places that are not inclusive, where we haven't been creating an equal place at the table for people. And you came.
Much to my demise, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you plan on that being your main gig right now. Totally. And it's, it goes back to that place of being responsible for making sure that we're embodying the Great Mother in the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, my question for you is, what do you think are some of the most vital first steps in the human design community that we need to start taking to make it more inclusive? Because I think and this may be a dodgy question, and if I'm putting you on the spot, forgive me, but I think that in human design, because it's human design, and you look at the triangle and you can go, oh, well, there's no racism, no bias in this. It's a chart. You don't even know from looking at the chart, is this a masculine person or a feminine person or somebody who's, it's neutral. But that's not true. So where do you think there are places where people can begin to translate this information in a more inclusive way?
Yeah. So when I do a human design consult, I always talk about how the chart doesn't give context to the world we're in, or the chart doesn't give context to our identity and the things that we have to face every day. And some people face more things and some people face less. And so I think first is starting from that. It's not about disempowering us from the chart. I always think it's like, if you have your chart and you feel constricted, okay, we got to change that relationship, because the experience of getting to know yourself needs to be an expansive one, right? So first that. Second is, I think we can't escape doing our own individual work.
Darn.
Yeah, sorry. Because like I've seen brands and I've seen spaces that I've been kicked out of for highlighting certain things that, oh, well, they now have this awareness. And so now their marketing is more diverse, and that's great. But we also have to consider, can I hold the space? Can I actually create safety for somebody? And we can't do that until the members do that own individual work of understanding how there's a system at play, and we contribute to the system. Like all of us contribute to the system, as woke as we want to think we are, right? And it's, and how do we, and it's a pretty juicy dismantling that can really shift the relationships you have with humans in your own life, in your own family, right? Because you have to make decisions about, wow, now that we've made commitments, and I think that's another key point, is we can't have it all perfect just because we've read the books and we started doing the work. And even if we bring all of this into ceremonially, healing our lineage that has created harm, or healing the lineage of trauma, of course, like even when we do that, it's still a process. And it's a process that it's like shedding, just like when people begin to do spiritual work and spiritual healing, this is just like, oh, I operate within the system. I live within the system. So great to do inner spiritual work. And then now it's like, how does that get to express itself based on like the construct of this world, right?
So I think I want to add one other point with that I think, over the weekend, Kim Gold's going to address this a little bit, and Rosie Aronson also addresses this a little bit. But I think we also have to look at the vocabulary that we use and continue to explore those places where perhaps the language that we're using around not just human design, but even astrology in general, is inherently biased,
Mm-hmm.
that it has built into it. First of all, I mean, Kim Gold talks about how we don't even look at the feminine planets. We just, except for Venus, you know, we have all masculine planets, all masculine archetypes, and many of us, regardless of how we identify, don't identify or relate to some of those archetypes, and yet they're sort of fixed in the chart. And I believe, and I don't have the lens yet. I'm working on cultivating this lens personally, and I'm so hoping for people to join me in this exploration. But I believe, I'm sure that there's racism in the language that we use, and that it's not, that it has built into it a certain bias. And I would love to see us all collaborate and explore together, and to hear from Black and brown voices, especially, how perhaps the language doesn't feel like they can, like people can take it in and really own it and relate to it and have it speak to their personal experience and their journey.
I agree with you on the genderness of the planets, right? But that's because of historically when that became more popular and more available.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to circumvent that is to have a direct relationship with the cosmos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, it just like, you know, religiosity can make spiritual concepts mold people to a certain dogma. When we go direct with the divine or with the cosmos, then we can remove that layer that was the translator at the time, and it's no longer valid translation.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. You know, one of my very first astrology teachers, and I know you know Seo as well, taught
Oh,
me, but in the very, very beginning of my career, to go out every night and talk to the planets, to really, as you said, cultivate a conscious relationship with the planets, and to really hear what they have for us. And in fact, this whole week, Venus is right outside my window in my office. And when I'm up in the mornings, it's really bright as the morning star because I'm up pretty early. And we've been having some deep dialogues this week, and it's pretty amazing to have that experience. And I think I always encourage people, go talk to the planets,
mhm.
especially when you've got like a highlight in a life cycle coming up, like if you've got a Saturn return or a Uranus opposition or a Chiron return. Go figure out in dialogue with the cosmos, as you said, what's up and how do I use these cycles as catalytic aspects of my own growth and expansion. So
Absolutely. I mean, it's all, you know, all there before us.
mm-hmm.
You know, it's not there to work against us. It's all there before us. And there's a soul curriculum that, you know, we get to explore through astrology and through human design. And it's the beginning, right? To look at ourselves through that lens is kind of the beginning.
Perfect. Good. So tell us what you're going to be talking about at conference.
Okay. So I have the workshop in Spanish,
Mhm.
which in Spanish is poder, paciencia y profundidad de presencia. But I'm doing the same one in English, so which is in English is power, patience, and presence using human design.
Mm.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about what it means and readdressing what power really means and having patience with who we are and diving into that sense of presence. You know, it's funny that you mentioned the cosmos and all of that, because I've been thinking so much lately about that Saturnian step-by-step thing that happens in life, because so many people, like all of us, we come to human design or any consultation and we're like, how do I change it all? How do I be who I'm supposed to be? And what I've, especially having a defined sacral, what I've realized is what's really landed and what I've embodied, not just realized, is that it's all about a series of small steps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a series of mm-hms and mm-ms.
Mm-hmm.
and those like, and you were talking about this last weekend of like how then in those series of small steps, then the magic just gets to show up, and we get to be blessed, but in little ways that amount to something profound. So I'm going to be talking about that. And then finally, post-conference, I'm going to be diving into the framework of sacred commerce so people can begin to, you know, think about the ways that they want to shift short-term, long-term, and, you know, the things that how they can look at their business from a model that will be sustainable long-term. I think that's the biggest thing. We're entering a new world of commerce, whether we want to admit it or not. And so yeah, that invitation will be fun too, to walk people through that framework.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if people want to learn more about your work, how can they connect with you?
So they can go to my website, Asha is Now, and if they want to know about their Dharma archetypes, soul archetypes, which is the beginning of sacred commerce, ashaisnow.com/Dharma, DHARMA.
One of our favorite words.
My oldest daughter's name. Yeah.
Yes.
And then I probably hang out more on Instagram, and it's Asha is Now on Instagram.
Perfect. Good. Awesome. So go connect with Asha, explore your sacred path and your sacred commerce. Join us this in
Yes.
2 weeks. I lost a week. Last week, yesterday I thought, oh, it's 3 weeks. And I looked at the calendar and I thought, oh, you can't lose a week in 2020. That's like an epoch. But join us if you want to register for a conference. It's humandesignstore.com. It's just an honor and such a, I don't want to say it's a breath of fresh air because you're so much more. It's like you bring this power and this groundedness to all the conversations we have that always leaves me walking away going, that's what integrated wisdom looks like. So thank you so much for being here today. And thank you all for joining us, for listening. And I look forward to seeing you all at conference. And I look forward to seeing you, hopefully sometime soon, in person.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Bye.